I would like you to explain this to me like I know nothing, because I know nothing.
Quite a cheery list. I'm glad we're not here to sell menopause.
A young woman will go to the doctors at least 10 times before the GP or the health professional will put it together and go, that'd be perimenopause.
Let's say, oh God, that's my menopause brain. I'm also extremely honest with my students, and I use humour a lot.
It's about being client-centred, Phil, in your face. Do I have too much on my mind, or am I perimenopausal?
Nobody's laughing about incontinence, clitoral atrophy, bowel incontinence. Nobody's laughing about that. That's not funny. Yeah. I mean, Phil's probably got more estrogen at the moment than most menopausal women. You have.
And I'm very proud of that fact. I go around bragging about it.
Shared experiences will hopefully reduce the stigma.
Inspire Instructor Training podcast, where the learning never stops. Welcome to Inspire Instructor Training's second roundtable podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the menopause. And we have a wonderful bunch of guests and experts to discuss this lovely topic that everyone needs to learn about, and especially me. So we're gonna let everyone introduce themselves as we always do. So guest number one, what's your name? Where'd you come from?
Hi, I'm Diana Todd. I am from Glasgow, but I'm based in the Wirral. And the reason I'm here is I'm 43. So I haven't gone through the menopause yet, but I'm at an age where it's a consideration. Well, it's going to happen, but I'm starting to consider the consequences and what's going to happen to me. And during a workshop, and I'm not going to give away who the other guest is, but during a workshop, we had a lovely conversation with two of the attendees, and they were talking about the menopause and how it affects them as driving instructors. And they said that's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about the impact of the menopause on our industry and us as driving instructors. I went, ooh. And then I came to you with the idea and said, let's do it. And so we did.
Fair enough. Longest intro ever of someone's name and where they're from.
Wait till you see what I've got written down.
Guess number two, what's your name, where you're from, and why are you here?
So I am Kate Barker, and I'm from sunny New Brighton on the Wirral, and I am from Wirral Menopause Community Support Group. Diane approached us to join your podcast for the day and talk about menopause.
Brilliant, thank you. That's how you do it, Diana. Guess number three, what's your name? Where did you come from?
I'm Jane. I was from near Blackpool, now based on the Wirral. So I'm a personal trainer and health and wellness coach, specialising in perimenopause and menopause. So I work with ladies on a one-to-one basis on all aspects of health and lifestyle. So exercise, activity, nutrition, not diet, because we'll hate that word, sleep and stress management, and just provide recommendations, lifestyle adjustments and strategies to help optimise health and wellness at this time of our lives, and trying and get some control over our mind and bodies, and which seems easier said than done, I would say.
Yes, definitely.
More often than not. So when Diana invited us on, it was really just, we agreed to come on, hopefully to try and just normalise conversations around menopause and help bring some understanding and empathy. Mainly to the men, really, we said, didn't we, to try and
there's a lot of women who don't really understand what they're starting to go through, but also if they're not going through it, then they don't understand it either. So it's great raising awareness.
Yep, 100%. And guess number four, what's your name? Where'd you come from?
Hello, I'm Sarah Baldock. I am a driving instructor, and I was one of the ladies that was having the conversation with Diana at the workshop. And that's why I'm here. I am almost 53 and am, I think, now in the menopause phase, but have been battling perimenopause since I was about 45. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you for coming on and spending time to discuss it, because I think you're right, it doesn't get talked about. I feel like just from the outside, it's being talked about more, but like than it probably used to be, and certainly from the past, but definitely not enough, as it affects half the population. So
I would argue it affects all the population because all the men have women in their lives.
true, true. Thank you for correcting me on that. Feel free to do that at any point when I say something stupid. So,
Not stupid, definitely not stupid, and there's never a silly question either. It's. I think it's the awareness is becoming, like you say, there's a lot more in the media now, and things like our groups, and also people like Sarah and Diana who want to raise awareness with your communities. I think getting the word out there is more and more important to everybody, isn't it? Not just women.
yeah, 100%. And I think I want to start with, first of all, just explaining what it is. And I would like you to explain this to me like I know nothing, because I know nothing.
We had to explain it to Diana as well last week. Yeah. She was quite surprised. So I suppose really the word menopause is defined as literally just one day. And it's the day that a lady hasn't had a period for 12 months. So that is menopause. That's it, done, that one day. But the perimenopause can start as early as their mid-30s and last up to 15 years until that one day. Some people, it might just, like Sarah was saying just then, she's 53 now. She thought she started around 45 with the perimenopause symptoms. It's the perimenopause bit that really we need to raise more and more awareness of. And that menopause is just one day. The menopause doesn't go on forever. So once you've gone through the perimenopause with all the symptoms and everything else, that one day is when you've not had a period for 12 months. Post-menopause, then the rest of your life, some symptoms can still be prevalent, and there's no kind of definition of when it starts and ends. Everybody's different. Some people will start in their late 30s, some in their mid-40s, some might not even have symptoms, and then all of a sudden they realise they haven't had a period for 12 months. I think a lot of our ladies that we speak to who have got lots of the perimenopause symptoms are just like, they've been 8 or 9 months without a period, and then one comes and they're devastated, because they just want it over with. I don't think really it's ever over with as such. But there's also medical, surgical and early onset menopause to consider, and these are where people have had surgery for things like cancer or medical menopause, different. So, for instance, one of the ladies in our group, her body's allergic to progesterone. We'll come to the hormones later. So, that's set her
27.
Yeah, so that set her into early menopause. And again, there's not enough awareness for those kind of things. So I think the 3 stages, menopause is that one day, but the perimenopause is the bit prior, and that's the bit that we kind of
troublesome period.
The troublesome period where we kind of help people and support people around that period, just to let them know they're not going mad, pretty much.
So you mentioned symptoms. Did you want to go through a few of those? Like,
how long have you got?
I was just about to say, I hope that Costa coffee cup is full.
We could be here a while.
Well, there's 48 official symptoms, but I think it's well documented and anecdotally there's at least 70 that
we reckon. Yeah.
I think most people assume that menopause is the main hormones are just at the end of the reproductive years, but what they don't realise is that every organ system in the body is affected by menopause, because we have hormone receptors for estrogen and progesterone throughout all those organ systems. So once you get those fluctuations in hormones, which is peaks and troughs of those hormones throughout that period, that's why it's such a roller coaster of symptoms. Not everybody will have all of them. Some get away quite lightly, and some really, really struggle with virtually all the list. They're just show-offs because they have all 70 of them. But it looks more like if you see it on a graph, it's more like an ECG graph. Whereas it's not a nice gradual decline in hormone as we age, like a man's testosterone. This is more like an ECG graph. So just going through those symptoms, it's not just hot flushes. And it's a big myth that if you don't have a hot flush, you're not going through menopause. That's just one of the most documented. So just going through the systems affected, if we go to the brain, there is the hot flushes. We've also got brain fog, memory problems, insomnia, anxiety, headaches, migraines, and depression. Then you go to the musculoskeletal system. So it's joint pain, muscle aches, restless legs, frozen shoulder. Cardiovascular system, palpitations, really common, breathlessness. The skin, itchy, crawling skin. You really struggle with that. Just with that Sarah's laughing. Sarah gets this. Dry eyes, dry skin, tinnitus, allergies, and vertigo. We have estrogen receptors in our ear.
Sarah's just nodding away.
Sarah's nodding, ticking the list. Emotional system, lack of motivation, fatigue, lack of joy, lack of libido, loss of confidence. And the last one, a really key one, genitourinary system. So stress, urge incontinence, vaginal dryness. The first time I've got the first one in. Vaginal burning pain, UTIs, bleeding, and even bowel incontinence. So it's quite a cheery list. I'm glad we're not here to sell menopause. But just really to highlight the extent of those hormones on the entire system. And I think that's what people don't realise. Women don't realise, let alone men. They are.
Yeah, and I think as well is the the age range of people, women experiencing these symptoms could be in their late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, right the way up through the 50s. But a lot of women with those symptoms, particularly things like the fatigue, the brain fog, they just kind of think, oh, I'm just busy, so they're in that kind of sandwich generation where they've got either little kids and they're at school and they've got to and they're still at work, or they've got teenage kids that are off to university, plus they've got their their parents who are aging. So that sandwich generation, it's a little
probably
bit like
the peak of their careers as well.
It's a kind of a little bit of a pressure cooker, and they've got all of these symptoms, going around their head, affecting their body, affecting their confidence. But a lot of women will just put it down to, I'm just busy, and try to adjust their lives that way. So they don't. Is it something like a young woman will go to the doctors at least 10 times before the GP or the health professional will put it together and go, that'd be perimenopause.
It's because the symptoms are so diverse, isn't it? It's not just changes to periods, because it's so many, like vertigo and tinnitus. That they would never associate that with perimenopause or fluctuating hormones.
And I think the thing is as well is that the changes to periods happens much later. It's all of those symptoms. So a lot of ladies who join our group, our Wirral Menopause community group, they pretty much say, I'm so glad I found you. I thought I was going mad. And I know that was how I felt as well. And Sarah, I could see you nodding.
On that point, actually, I did see Sarah nodding along vigorously. So I'm just going to bring you in here, Sarah. So I think particularly as well from a driving instructor perspective, how has this affected your job? Like, how has it affected you day to day, like being a driving instructor?
It's a challenge. Some days are better than others. I have what I call bad menopause days. And on those bad menopause days, the brain fog is my main issue in the car. And it can manifest itself in ways that as simple as I forget a word. So I forget what the handbrake's called. I forget what the indicator is, the clutch, all these day-to-day words that I use all the time, I can't think of. So there's that. Then there's the more dangerous element of it, where if I see something that's developing in front of me that I need to deal with, I know what I want to say, but I can't actually say it. So that then becomes quite a safety critical situation. If I can't get my words out in time, more often than not, I will have to physically intervene, which I don't want to do. But that's because I can't actually tell them what I need to do. Then it's things like the lack of sleep, the hot sweats at night. The lack of sleep means that obviously I'm tired. That leads me to be more anxious. My decision making is not as good. My patience has left me completely. I have very, very little patience left. So it can be quite disruptive, but it's not every day and it's not every lesson. So it's for me, I'm quite lucky. I think I can manage it quite well, and I do manage it quite well. But I can see how for some people it would be utterly, utterly disruptive.
Yeah, I don't think I could do a physical job where I've got to go and be with people. I just don't think it would. And the last 2 years, the motivation is really hard for me. Just getting out and doing normal things. So having to be in a situation where you've got to teach somebody and keep them safe, keep yourself safe, is a huge achievement to be going through the menopause as well.
I think the thing is, though, that I do love the job, and that does make it easier. I get a huge amount of job satisfaction out of it, so therefore I find it a lot easier just to keep going. But I have had to implement some changes in order to do that. And I think that's where some women might struggle with it, is that they either give up altogether with work, or they just struggle on.
We lose a lot of women from the workplace.
There's 1 in 5, I think, that leave. I had a client, she was a head teacher, and she said she'd sort of struggled with working part-time, having her children, and then gone back to work when the children were older, full-time. And then she progressed to deputy head and then became head teacher. And that was her dream job at late 40s. That was the culmination of her career. And she said she lasted about a year, and she'd be standing in front of an assembly, full of the whole school. And like I say, the brain fog would hit. And then the sweats would come because she was embarrassed because she couldn't remember what she was going to say. And she ended up stepping down from her role because she said, I can't do this role at this time. And she did get medical she then decided she would go and be a dog walker to get away from people. But then got really bad joint pains from menopause and had to stop doing that. But she did get medical intervention. She's fine, and she is back teaching, but she didn't realise how much help was out there, and just thought, and she didn't want to vocalise it for fear of judgment. And I don't know whether I'm jumping ahead now, but I was going to say, do you think other driving instructors would share their experiences with you? Or if they spoke up, do you think that would be judged as in affecting your competency at work?
I think so, probably, because there is a fair amount of sexism within our industry anyway, and I think that that might just add fuel to the fire, or women would be worried that would add fuel to the fire. So that's a valid point.
It's interesting. I'd be interested to see how a Facebook post on one of the Facebook groups would go around this. In fact, I'm interested to see how, when I post about this as a podcast, how the response it gets. But that's why we're having this conversation, is to try and normalize that so you don't get that response. Sarah, you mentioned a couple of times about you're managing it and coping and putting in strategies. I'm just wondering what those are.
So I reduced my working hours and put my prices up as well to compensate for the lack of hours. Otherwise it was either that or stop altogether, and I don't want to stop altogether. So that was one of the first things that I did. I'm also extremely honest with my students, and I use humor a lot. So I take the piss out of myself.
You've literally got to laugh your way through it. Yeah.
Otherwise you cry, right? You have to laugh or you cry. So it might be something as simple as, when they get in the car, I'll say to them, I'm having a bad day. I don't need to go into details. I don't need to, but if I forget my words, they know that I'm having a bad day. And generally they step up and they support me. So if I forget the handbrake, for example, they'll say to me, handbrake? And I go, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
How much easier does that make the whole environment, though?
Hugely.
By being honest.
It does. It makes it, if you're honest with them, generally, that's how I work anyway. They're generally, really supportive, most of them. And also, of course, a lot of the girls that I teach have mums similar age to me, so they're going through it as well. So it opens up a conversation with them sometimes, not so much with the boys, but definitely with the girls. It can sometimes open up a conversation, and I'll just let sit, oh God, that's my menopause brain, and they go, oh yeah, my mum's like that. And then they'll tell me something that happened to their mum, or that their mum does. And so it kind of opens up.
A nice conversation in the car. I love that.
Yeah. I think, and younger people, there needs to be more involvement in education and awareness for younger women as well. I am glad that things are more in the media now, that you can actually speak and say, that's my menopause brain. I was in a meeting at work, which is kind of, my meeting was kind of split male and female. And I know that most of them are similar age to me. I'm 52 now. But I said something about, oh, she's probably menopausal, about one of the other girls in the meeting. And my manager, who's female, and some of the team went, oh! And I just went, why are you embarrassed about that? Why is that a bad thing to say? And I then sent them some information and said, this shouldn't be a taboo subject. It shouldn't be a, oh gosh, kind of subject. And I just feel like, I hope that we are kind of generational, our generation, our age group, are the last ones to be shocked and not prepared for menopause. I really hope that the awareness that's happening now is going to make it that people are, and young girls are, not just watching their mum go through it, but preparing themselves for it.
I think as well, I think the fact that you and I are obviously, we're Gen Xers, and we have very little filter anyway. I don't know about you, but I have very little filter anyway. And when you combine that with the menopause, we're lethal. We are lethal.
Yeah. A lot of the women say to us, I just do not put up with any bullshit anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I'm done.
Yeah.
No, you're not pulling that one on me.
But I think you stretch in so many different directions, and your day-to-day becomes so difficult when you're managing all those symptoms and looking after everybody else, young, old, working between. There genuinely isn't the tolerance left anymore to cope with that. I just don't think they have that resilience buffer anymore. I think our stress hormones, Kate loves me talking about cortisol, but your baseline stress levels are generally 3 to 4 times higher in perimenopause and menopause, just at baseline. So what used to take you a 9 out of 10 to blow your top would now only be 4 out of 10, and it'll take to that same level. So genuinely, the lack of filter, lack of tolerance is real because your baseline levels have moved. So
yeah, and that's true. That's another thing that I do. Coming back to Phil's question about how I manage stuff, I'm very choosy about who I work with in the car now, because the students that I find I get on with best, generally the ones that are referred to me anyway. So it's generally people with anxiety and people that I can build up. I'm not so good at working with the more bolshy students. Phil and Diana will know who exactly the sort of student I'm talking about. But I have no tolerance for them. And if they get in my car and they say, oh, I want to pass as quickly as possible, I'm like, well, you need to go find someone else to work with, because I can't deal with you. I have no patience for you. So that's the other thing that I do. I'm very picky with who I work with. Diana's laughing. I'm very picky with who I work with. And that has helped as well massively. Yeah. So I am very fortunate in that I don't need to work long hours, and I generally only teach a couple of people a day, and sometimes 3 maximum. And I generally don't have to travel very far because all of my students are reasonably local. So my pool of people is quite small, but it's...
And you don't have to get public transport either.
Exactly. So I am very fortunate. I've made it work for me. And I think that's what's really important, is that you've got to find a way to, if you want to continue working, you've got to find a way that makes it work. And you've got to be really honest with yourself about what will work and what won't work. And don't do the stuff that won't work, because you'll be more miserable, and you've got enough of that going on in your day-to-day stuff. You don't need it in your work life as well. So you just need to make it as easy as possible for yourself.
Yeah, I love how you've found your way and your solutions. And I think it's quite unique in this industry in a sense, because I know you guys do quite like a bit of work with like businesses and offices and raising that awareness, because obviously you're in that environment, you're interacting with people all the time. Whereas we're quite unique with the driving instructor in the sense that, yes, we have our colleagues and we chat to them on Facebook and things like that, but actually day to day, we're just out there on our own. So the people actually that this affects is our learners. And I love the fact that you've just gone, I'm just going to be honest with them and talk to them about this.
Yeah.
And they're fully aware of the situation, and they're with you. And I think you've got, like you said, you've created this like clientele as well that you'd be happy to work with and would be understanding in this sort of kind of scenario. So I think anyone listening to this who is going through similar or is about to go through similar, I think that's a really good sort of kind of example of like how to manage it yourself. And even just like And it was almost a throwaway comment, but even just the fact that you chose to raise your prices so you could reduce your working hours is just like, it's that sort of kind of thinking that's gonna help these sort of kind of situations, because people might be worried about reducing their working hours because of income, and like you've still got bills to pay. Yeah, no, I love that.
The way I looked at that, though, Phil, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you. The
fine.
way I looked at that was that by reducing my working hours, I become a better instructor. And so therefore I can charge a bit more.
Yeah,
No?
absolutely. I'm going to bring Diana in here because I must have loads of questions bubbling away in your head.
Oh, that's
They're going to cry.
I'm absolutely.
And it's gone a whiter shade of pale from
Yeah. It was, yeah.
So as someone who's now probably terrified that this is going to all happen, and that you're going to have to deal with meetings with me during all this as well, have you got any questions, like anything that you heard just then that you would want to elaborate on? I think also, I know you're a very solution-based person as well, so I can imagine you're already thinking of solutions for yourself. If you wanted to talk about those as well.
Yes, please. Thank you. So weirdly, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who, it's funny how when you start to have these conversations, how many people then talk about their experiences and stuff. And really good friend of mine, she's the menopause advocate for her company in a pharmaceutical company. And I got a little bit of an insight into what you guys were saying earlier about the younger generation and the mums going through it. And because it's a good friend, I was sat there and her daughter, and they had a really frank conversation. And her daughter, my friend said, she went, "It really annoys me that when you're laughing at me," she went, "you're taking the piss out of me and you're laughing at me." Now, the daughter turned around and she said, "No, I'm laughing at something else. I'm laughing at this. And, actually it was completely unrelated." And she went, "But that's how you're making me feel." And it's interesting because I could see it. I could absolutely see it because I've seen my mum go through it. And we had a similar situation when I was absolutely most perfectly innocent, no judgment, made a suggestion. And it escalated to the highest hilt because her perceived thoughts were around me thinking she was stupid. That did not cross my mind in any way, shape, or form because my mum is far from stupid.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that, Diana, because I actually pulled my sister up about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I said, "Please stop laughing at me." I got upset. "Please stop laughing at me when I forget my words." She's joined me now, so she's so we forget our words together. But it's like a game of give us a clue, But I completely relate because I was really upset that she just kept on laughing and taking the mickey out of me. And she said, "Oh, I'm laughing with you." I was like, "But I'm not laughing. It's horrible." So
confidence destroyed at this point with everything else you're trying to manage. I totally
get it. But yeah, my sister's caught up now and I've got my own back.
Yeah.
It's good from that communication point that you've had that. But what I was speaking, because obviously I've been really quite interested in this for a while. And you guys said something earlier that struck a chord with me because I'm busy. We've just launched Inspire at the start of this year, which seems madness. I have started working more hours as a driving instructor. I feel like I've got 3 million ideas and I can only do one every quarter. And I am forgetting things. Phil laughs at me because not in a mean way, like in a nice, like he laughs because I need notes. I have pages of notes. You all saw my notes for this podcast. It feels like that's more notes than I have ever done for 33 podcasts.
I think all the podcasts added together, actually.
I loved them. I
knew you would.
Absolutely perfect.
I knew you would. And that's what it is. It's about being client-centered, Phil, in your face. So but anyway, so for me, I think what I'm taking away from this, and what I had a conversation with my friend, is, do I have too much on my mind, or am I perimenopausal? And she suggested that she said that, that feeling of having dementia, for want of a better word.
Oh, everybody asks that.
Yeah.
I'm going for a dementia check. No,
Exactly.
check your symptoms.
She suggested that I go and get tested for testosterone, because she'd said that was the thing that was linked to dementia. Or not dementia, but the perimenopause, or forgetfulness. And I suppose my question is that something that you guys would recommend, that I get, I go with to the doctor and say, well, this is what's happening. I've just had this podcast. I've had it suggested to me that I get a blood test. Is that something that's going to be well received at my
on the testosterone? Good luck with that. Most of the GPs around here, generally they don't test for testosterone. They will. In fact, Kate will tell you that there shouldn't be a blood test for perimenopause or menopause, because your hormone levels, like we said about the ECG graph, fluctuating so much. You would need daily, hourly, weekly blood tests. Okay. So the blood test will show if you're fertile, won't they, or post-menopause, and not in between. But we follow Lisa Mosconi. She's a neuroscientist who wrote Menopause Brain. She's brilliant. And she's chosen to specialize in female brains. And she'll have, in fact, she posted on Facebook yesterday, she's a good one to follow. She'll have images of brain scans of pre-menopause, perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause, and shows how the brain structure changes. And she said one of estrogen's main responsibilities is you have neurons that send messages through your brain, like connections. And she said without estrogen, it's a bit like all the builders sat at the work site, sat on the phones, all materials ready, playing Candy Crush or something, waiting for the site foreman to come and they'll start work, but the site foreman doesn't arrive, which is why the messages don't get sent, because everybody's just sat around not doing anything. So once you put some of that estrogen back, then everything will pick up again. And there is a new normal after post-menopause. But she just describes it as the site foreman is missing, which is why those messages don't go through. But testosterone, that made a massive difference for me. It was the missing piece, but I had to go and get that privately.
But I think as well, at the age you are, Diana, and that you're kind of starting on the journey, possibly, the doctors shouldn't be doing a blood test as standard. They should be looking at your symptoms. So I know that we mentioned our symptom checker. Yeah. So we've got a lot of the most common ones listed on our leaflet. So we went through it with you, didn't we, the other day? But I would always suggest don't go to the doctors and ask for a blood test to see if you're perimenopausal, because that just as Jane said, that just tells doctors whether you're fertile, so whether you're still having a cycle. So your estrogen levels will keep on going right through your perimenopause, but they change drastically. Yeah. So go by symptoms. It's your estradiol that they would need to check. And I don't know that testosterone would be needed quite so early in perimenopause. I'm not medically trained, so obviously take proper advice. But I would go to the doctors, ask for bloods if you really want bloods. But most of them now can prescribe a low dose estrogen HRT for people coming into their perimenopause, and it's that estrogen dip that changes how you function. Okay. So testosterone is very, very difficult to come by because it's not licensed for women in the UK. It's licensed for men in the UK.
Right, of course.
When their testosterone dips very, 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 very slowly from their 30s, men's hormones change. I mean, they have estrogen and progesterone as well in their bodies, but women actually need more testosterone than men do in their day-to-day functioning hormones. But our hormones change daily, up and down, which is what causes, as Jane said earlier, the roller coaster. But testosterone is not licensed in the UK for women by GPs, so you'd have to go to a menopause specialist, and they are few and far between on the NHS. and their waiting lists are very, very long. Or you'd need to go privately, which can cost anything from £100 to £300 to get private blood tests, private checks, and I get those private prescriptions. Jane and I think you pay privately for your testosterone. I got mine through a menopause specialist because I'm really lucky that the local PCN, primary care network, there's 12 GPs on the Wirral that feed into this one menopause clinic, and I was quite lucky that my GP goes into that. But when you consider the size of the Wirral and other areas across the country, it is very, very difficult to get good menopause advice from health clinicians.
She said that there's a local doctor in Upton, which is literally right the corner from us. That's where the test centre is, actually. Maybe that's why she specialised in it. And basically, she is, I believe, like a big advocate for menopause. She may even be on this PCN. So I think perhaps I'll look at it. Would be great to be signposted to something like that, so that again I can just start to get the facts. I almost, following on from our conversation earlier last week, I didn't want to dive too much into it because I would take over the podcast. I'd be like, right, tell me now what I need to know. So I think that would be my next steps, is trying to arm myself with as much information as I possibly can, because I'm like you, Sarah. I forget my words. I said this to someone the other day. I can't remember. I was like, just get that thingamajiggy thing there.
Thingamajig is a good one.
And the other day, weirdly, Stuart's having issues with his car. And I had loads on in my mind, and I was doing the Christmas fair and stuff. And I'm driving to take Stuart to pick up his car from the garage. And I said to him, right, how are we going for dinner tonight? How are you getting there? And I was probably a bit irritable with him as well. And he was like, well, I'll just come in. I was like, no. I'm driving to the Christmas fair, and I was really adamant. I was like, are you going to get the bus? Or what is it you're doing? And he was like, we're going to pick up my car. But yeah, sorry. I don't even know. And I think also I've got a young child, and I feel like there's so many plates spinning that the ideas and things that I'm doing are absolutely contributing towards this as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's it. There's too much noise
Mm-hmm.
from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need to be in a darkened room on my own to process some information before I present to the world, is basically what I feel like at the moment. So
it is the resilience piece, isn't it? People have said, well, our mums went through this and our grandmas, and they all seem to manage fine. But actually, if you think about a woman's life in the 50s and 60s, they probably had the children in the late teens, early 20s. They were probably dying in the mid 50s anyway. So they weren't that long past menopause. But they weren't juggling. If you think about an average 45, 50-year-old woman's life now, with the young kids, with the elderly parents, they're expected to have show homes, lovely cars, lovely holidays, look great for social media, be a cook in the kitchen, a nymph in the bedroom, perfect mum, perfect lifestyle. And bring in a load of money, be a good career woman as well. I think your resilience to be able to cope with all of that is so different to where they were in the 50s. And one of the big things that I learned going through this is I think your starting point for perimenopause makes a big difference. So if you eat a lot of refined carbohydrates, if you have a lot of caffeine, if you have a lot of alcohol, and you don't eat very well, you have lots of processed food, you don't exercise. If you put all those things together, your starting point is so much worse than someone who, eats quite well, exercises, isn't particularly overweight, doesn't drink too much. They will definitely have a worse time than someone who is coming into this from a butch. It's like an inflammation point, really. They will have a better ride. So like you say, you've got so much on at the moment. And actually your resilience to deal with it all is actually less than it was 10 years ago, but yet you work loads more. So it's as if, like you just said about juggling plates, all those things are on a plate, but the plate suddenly got smaller. That's probably the best way to think of it.
That's an excellent analogy. It's exactly how I feel. And it's good because I suppose then what I'm hearing is I must go to the gym tonight because I do have to go to today's my gym day. And to do little small steps just to minimize the impact for when it does hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, I think, and I think sometimes it does hit people like a ton of bricks. It really does. But that, when we were talking before and Sarah was saying about the brain fog and you were just saying then about the forgetting, so many ladies on our group are going for dementia checks, and it just isn't, it's not normalized enough that perimenopause affects your brain so much and your body so much. I'm dealing with my dad who's got dementia at the moment, and when he gets frustrated and can't remember his words, that's exactly how I am, you know. So and being in a car with a student must just be so, it's really difficult. So I think the being open and honest that Sarah came out with before is the perfect way for you to kind of just workplace advocacy, to share your tips and your policies and stuff like that, but also share your shared knowledge will hopefully help other women in that situation to not be embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
So on that note, actually, because obviously Sarah shared how she's coping with it, which I think is fantastic, and obviously you are sharing that now with the instructor world, but I think actually I do wonder if there's maybe more we can do with that, and because you can't be the only instructor going through this, and that conversation just isn't happening publicly. But asking Kate and Jane, from an outside sort of kind of perspective, what do you think some good solutions would, and I also understand that it will be different for every person, but what solutions could instructors be putting in place other than maybe what Sarah's also already done? And also just on top of that, like as an industry, what do you think we could be doing better? And by better, I mean at all.
I think every industry needs to do better. Absolutely, every industry needs to do better. A lot of the support people are getting and reaching out for now is community support. So we're a CIC, we're a community interest company. So we don't get paid. It's almost like a type of charity that we ask for funding and things like that. So that community support can be a lifeline for some women. We offer emotional, practical, and social benefits to them. And I think signposting as an organisation, even if you haven't got people specifically that women can come to, maybe Sarah can become your menopause champion,
About the Facebook groups, maybe having, within your company, even if you post anonymously, for fear of judgment, if that would be preferable, just where you've shared tips or experiences, even just to go on between a lesson and just go, oh my God, this just happened during a lesson. I cannot believe it. You'd be mortified. And then for 6 or 7 other people to come on and go, oh my God, that happened to me yesterday.
Yeah. And
laugh about it,
does
shared experience, but it's all within your company. But have it anonymously if that makes you feel more comfortable and less judged, would be like whether it's forgetting your words or, I mean, there are some lifestyle interventions. That's my day-to-day job. But we were thinking about practical tips in the car. And I just recently did a women's workplace advocacy program, and that was really enlightening for women that are in factories and offices. And we had a story of a lady she was a barrister, and she went to a lovely meeting at head office, and they've got lovely white leather seats. And, she had an impromptu bleed, and then she was supposed to stand up and do a presentation. I mean, just an absolute nightmare. So we were saying that is quite common, apparently. So she was saying they have a black cardigan at work, and literally it could just be, you could be sat next to someone at the office and it would just be, okay, do you think you could just go and grab me the black cardigan so you can at least get to the toilet, without embarrassment and be able to seat yourself. So maybe something in the back of the car, whether it's a black coat or something, but the black seat covers, whether it's leaks, impromptu bleeds, even the hot flushes, the sweats, if the seat's damp, that's quite embarrassing, isn't it? Then to ask your learner to swap seats and you think the seat's damp, but just having a black seat cover, a waterproof one, would really help and take that embarrassment away. Dressing in layers, change of clothes in the car for emergencies, things like that. But in terms of lifestyle, staying hydrated is a massive part of it. That would really help with the brain fog, the fatigue, digestive issues, and reducing the caffeine. Anything that's caffeine, refined carbohydrates, snacking on biscuits for, trying to get some energy between lessons would actually all exacerbate symptoms. It actually makes brain fog worse. So making better food choices where possible, even though it's the last thing you feel like doing when you've not slept all night and you feel like you've got jet lag, as I'm sure Sarah spoke about earlier. Taking breaks when needed, rather than doing back-to-back lessons. I don't know whether it's practical to factor in breaks for toilet breaks, just to go and sit and breathe somewhere and have a laugh on your Facebook group about something that's happened, but to plan in those breaks. Communicating with colleagues. There are other supplements and there is medical intervention. So, the line now, most doctors that I listen to are saying nobody has to suffer. And in time, I think my daughter's 17, I think by the time she's going through perimenopause, it will be that women will just be given sort of top-up doses of estrogen. So they don't experience these peaks and troughs, but will have more of a smoother ride. Not enough to sustain a pregnancy. Nobody's putting you back to where you were when you were 21, but just enough to mitigate the symptoms. And you just sort of stay and much, ride along like a wave rather than, these peaks and troughs that everybody speaks about. That will be the norm. And nobody has to suffer. There's plenty of lifestyle interventions you can do that we're learning about now. So nobody really has to suffer.
And I think just having the open conversation,
massively.
For men and women, is normalising it. My biggest hashtag is #make menopause matter.
And make it normal.
It's quite interesting actually, because I've heard that a few times in the conversation, how it's embarrassing, or I can't say that, or even when you said to Sarah about posting it on Facebook and stuff, your face was like, oh, and it shouldn't be. I don't blame you, because I'm not sure I would be the person that does that. Probably would actually, but
spoiler alert: everyone with ovaries is going to go through it.
And this is what I was thinking. You were talking about it, and like Diana was talking about, how do I get this information? Where do I find this information? And it blows my mind that it's not something some people will go through.
Yes, exactly.
You're all going to go through this. Why is it so difficult? It should just be almost like you should be sent a letter at some point, because you're a certain age, going, here's some information.
Absolutely.
Bowel screening. Yeah, bowel screening has become the norm now. But talking about bowels, men's prostate as well. I think once men turn 40, is it now, or that they
get a check?
They get a check. For me, our kind of the menopause checklist, which is on the British Menopause Society, but the menopause checklist, the symptom checker, for me is if a woman is 40, say, or late 30s, and she goes to the doctors and she says, I've got maybe 3 or 5 of these 40 odd symptoms, that's when that doctor should be saying, let's talk about perimenopause. And that it shouldn't be a shock, it shouldn't be a surprise. They shouldn't have to keep going back with a different symptom each time. You had somebody tell you that the doctor said that she was too young yesterday.
She was too young. Yeah. So a lady came to yesterday and said her mum and grandma went through menopause at 39. They were really young. So she's 42, got every single one of those symptoms. And the GP said, no, you're too young. You can't have HRT. And she's been back 3 times since. That's in Runcorn and Warrington, and I have to say most GPs in the world have been excellent, aren't they? They are really good.
We do still have them who, we've got ladies that we just signpost them as best we can, because it is still...
We give them a little army to go with, don't we? Get back to your doctors and give them the backup. Go back to your GP, because that's not right. And they feel like they've got a little army behind them then, supported to go back to the GP, whereas so many get fobbed. But first-line treatment used to be antidepressants. It's not a depression. Everybody's got depression. They've got a lack of hormones. That's it.
It's still depression. It's still one of the first lines of medication. It's very frustrating that it's still not the norm to kind of talk about it with their GP. Yeah,
isn't it a fact that there is way more funding for things like erectile dysfunction
Sarah,
than there is the menopause?
And I'm not starting I am not starting a political row here, honestly. The lady that I see that's a urologist, and we were talking about a lot of the genital urinary syndrome of menopause, which makes me feel really sad, because lots of ladies will laugh about hot flushes, they'll laugh about brain fog, Nobody's laughing about incontinence, clitoral atrophy, bowel incontinence. Nobody's laughing about that. That's not funny. Yeah, dry vaginas. That's the second one we got in there. But she was saying there's a clinic that she runs that's for erectile dysfunction for men that have had prostate treatment. So obviously the side effect is mainly they struggle with impotency. And she said, these little old men will shuffle in. She said, he was 85. He's got his slippers on, a newspaper under his arm, and he's shuffling in. And he's really distressed because he can no longer get an erection. And she said, I wanted to ask him why. Why 85? But a lady goes and says, I'm really struggling. You know, I'm only in my early 40s. I've not been married that long. I'm really struggling with the lack of UTI, cystitis, burning pain, you know, painful sex. My relationship with my husband's on the rocks because of it. And really, she just fobbed off and given antidepressants. But a man at 85, God love him, he's a priority and he gets an NHS place, but women don't. And that's at the root cause of all of it. But we've been told, haven't we, from someone within the group, and she said, don't get your placards out on my account. But women's health is not a priority.
Going back to the testosterone conversation that we had before, you know, it's licensed for men, but not women. But women need it more.
Yeah. I mean, Phil's probably got more estrogen at the moment than most menopausal women. You have.
He's most.
I'm very proud of that fact. Go around bragging about it.
No judgment.
Yeah, by the end of this conversation, we would have sucked it out of him.
Oh dear.
Did you want to share your page and group as well, just so that anybody listening, I will put them in the show notes as well, but if you want to let us know, everybody, like what.
So we are Wirral Menopause Support Group. That's our public page. And Wirral Menopause Community CIC is our closed group, which that's kind of a lot more relevant to people on the Wirral because we offer menopause cafes and things like that. But the information that's on there is relevant to anybody that's menopausal, you know. So I've got people who live in Amsterdam, people who live in New Zealand who are to join the group. They can't necessarily come to the menopause cafes, but I think as a driving instructor world, it would be good for you to have a drop-in cafe like on a Zoom like this that has, you know, right, let's talk menopause, and you just come on and all chat about it. I think men and women, you know, my wife is struggling. What do I do? You know, I think if you have male and female, I think it would be great.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, because actually there's an education point there. And I know that we're driving instructors, and I know that this podcast is specifically about driving instructors and how it affects our role. But I think the wider community ambition, if you like, is for everybody to be aware of it, because you guys are sons and husbands and partners and boyfriends and dads, and
they're going to bring that into work on if they've had a bad experience at home and they're struggling because the wife's up all night tossing and turning with, you know, sweats and anger issues. And it is, I think the divorce rate's about 68% during the menopause transition period.
Yeah, well, it's about to be 69. I swear down, I'm going to crack him over the head. But
Diane, I did read yesterday, somebody posted on a group and they said, it was a man post, and he said, I'm really sorry, ladies, I didn't realise there was 10 other ways that I could possibly breathe, sleep,
yes.
I didn't realise I'd chosen the wrong one. And that's the biggest thing that people complain about, the way he breathes, the way he speaks. I mean, they do.
Don't chew. Stop breathing, please.
But yeah, I think that those, whatever your workplace, those men are taking that into work because they're experiences that they've got at home. And equally, the male driving instructors have female learners in the car. Yeah. So just asking, you know, is the car at a comfortable temperature? You know, do you need to take a break? Are you okay? Just being aware of what they're going through. And I don't think the whole menopause conversation will be normalised until women can talk about it openly, which is still, they're starting to. But equally, until it just becomes part of our language that men talk about. And even, like you said, you don't give leaflets out and say, chuck it to your wife when you get home and say, here, love, I think that'll sort you out. It's probably more tactful conversation than that.
I'm going home to tell her to listen to this podcast, so...
I think that's and it's definitely worth a conversation to get some input. But for me, there's a fine line between having those going through menopausal symptoms or living with people with menopausal symptoms, having that support, and then having a place that those going through it feel comfortable and open.
I think it's brilliant for you to have your own one for driving instructors, because a lot of the information, if people go online and start searching, if it's people that worked in factories or offices, I would get bored. I'm like, none of this applies to me, because you want that. If you're looking for information quickly because you've got a 15-minute break, you sat at night. If I was Sarah, I want to be looking on a Facebook group that is directly relevant to me, not office policy or, I mean, we did a workplace presentations at a factory, and their environment's very, very different, their working environment and the support that they need to what you would need. And I'd switch off if it was too much about other industries. I'd just shut the laptop down then. That'd be me.
I 100% agree. I think there needs to be something within the industry, even just like listening to, and I think particularly listening to Sarah today, like the solutions you've put in place. I don't think everybody would, and being able to hear that, even just the fact that you told your pupils, like I can imagine there are lots of people out there that have been through this and haven't told their pupils because they were embarrassed or didn't feel they could or didn't want to seem unprofessional or whatever reason. And hearing you say that, and then how well it's gone and how supportive your pupils have been, it would just inspire someone to do that as well and just go, yeah, absolutely. And sort of kind of, and I think there needs to be a space for those conversations in the industry. I am going to wrap it up now, though, because we have been chatting for about an hour, and it's been absolutely fascinating. I have learned so much, and it has been fascinating, and I hope we still have a lot of male instructors at this point in the podcast still listening in and have found it as interesting as I have. So before we wrap it up, though, did anyone have anything else they were bursting to add to the conversation?
I think from our point of view, really, Jane and I had kind of put a little bit of a reflection in, really, and I think more than anything is, for women to not hide. And speak up and don't fear judgment, share what their experiences are and seek support. And I think as an industry, like I said earlier, not every industry needs more openness about menopause, the perimenopause, the menopause, the postmenopause. I think just the reaching out and that shared experiences will hopefully reduce the stigma which goes with it.
And thank you for asking us, because I think it's on paper there's nothing really to gain from having us on other than the fact that you're aware of it and you want to help your fellow driving instructors, which is really impressive for us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you as well to everybody giving up time out of their diary and the prep that's gone into this, and
which reviews none.
yeah, and I as soppy as this may come across, I genuinely feel as if I've made 3 new friends, because I feel like,
not including that in me.
You were already a friend. You were already a friend. But I just feel like it's less daunting now. Isn't
that the power of shared experience?
Yeah. And I think actually, when you look at my face at the start of this podcast, error is what could have been described. Actually, I feel like there's some plans in place there to make things a little bit easier. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely to meet you all.
One quick last word. Vagina.
Yeah.
That's what makes men listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Inspire Instructor Training Podcast, where the learning never stops.